As you're looking through the internet, seeing everyone else catching fish, it's easy to ask, what baits are they using? What lakes are they at? And what secrets do they have? The real secret to fishing is understanding the fish, becoming confident in tactics, and knowing where to find them. On this episode of Secrets to Fishing, Peter talks through the fall process of putting the boat away so you're ready to get out fishing quickly in the spring. Next, he covers a simple checklist of all his ice fishing gear to make sure he is ready for early ice. Finally, Peter shares the resources he uses to find fish before he even leaves the house. This episode is presented by ShopMissouriSecrets.com and North Country Marine and Motorsports. Need help getting your boat winterized? Call North Country Marine and Motorsports.
So I'm getting the boat cleaned out and everything ready for this winter. And not because I'm a neat freak or anything like that, but because I really enjoy the spring bite for big walleyes and big largemouth. So here's a few things that I like to do to make sure that I'm ready for next spring. When it comes to my rods, I check the blank and the guides for any chips or breaks that I need to fix. For my reels, if there's any indication of dirt or water, I bring them home and clean and dry them throughout the winter. When it comes to tackle, I check every single box for any amount of water, so that way I don't need to worry about anything rusting over the winter. When it comes to tackle, rust is your worst enemy. And one of the easiest way to prevent rust is just to make sure your boxes are dry. But one tool we've been utilizing for the past few years is the Flambeau and Plano anti-rust boxes, and they haven't failed us yet. But what do you do with all your old boxes that don't have this anti-rust technology? Well, it's as simple as using pieces or whole tabs that have the technology. Simply put them in your box, and that hasn't failed either. For all of my fabric-based equipment like my ropes, drift socks, and most importantly, life jackets, I always hang them up because no matter how dry you think they are, they've been getting wet all year long. So there's nothing worse than opening up your compartments in the spring to find rotting and mildew equipment. And finally, for the boat, I make sure there's no water in the lower unit. I make sure all my batteries have a full charge, and then I do a detailed check of all the moving parts in the boat. Check your props and motor, tires, bearings, lights, tie-down straps, bunks, and winch strap and safety chains. And when I'm done with the boat, I make a list of anything I need to fix, replace, or repair. So do a little bit of cleaning, make a few lists, and schedule maintenance so you're ready for next spring. And now you can focus on what's next: early ice.
Check out our secrets and great tackle at MissouriSecrets.com.
One of our favorite ice fishing tools is the underwater AquaView camera. Today we're going to test the Dakota Lithium battery to see if it truly helps us fish longer with our AquaView camera. This is a standard lead acid battery that comes with all AquaView cameras. It is a 12 volt 9 amp hour battery. And today we're going to replace it with the Dakota Lithium battery, which is also 12 volts, but it is rated at 10 amp hours. To be fair, we're testing 3 batteries. The one that came with the AquaView that's about a year old, a brand new charged sealed lead acid battery, and the Dakota Lithium. The first thing we have to do is pull these 2 screws to swap the batteries. All 3 batteries were placed in a controlled environment, so let's see what happens. We used the onboard charger for the AquaView to charge all 3 batteries. As you can see, the original battery only lasted 1 hour and 21 minutes. The brand new lead acid battery lasted 6 hours and 29 minutes. The Dakota Lithium lived up to its promise and lasted 9 hours and 25 minutes. That's why this battery will live in our AquaViews. Now if they lasted this long in a camera, imagine how long they'll last in a fish finder.
This week's Simple Trick is brought to you by American Legion Victor B. Wallen Post 12.
It gets really expensive buying new batteries every time you need them because your old ones are dead. It doesn't matter if it's your boat batteries during the winter or your ice fishing batteries during the summer. Make sure that all of your batteries get a full charge at least once a month. Now make sure that you follow all of the manufacturer's recommendations because they're there for a reason. And don't forget your headlamp and flashlight rechargeable batteries like Peter does.
This video experience is brought to you by 241 Inc. Productions. See it, hear it, experience it.
So now that all of your open water gear and equipment is cleaned up and put away for the winter, it's time to start focusing on ice fishing. And for me, that means going through a checklist to make sure everything, including all of my gear and equipment, are clean, prepared, and not broken. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the ice auger, because you kind of need this to put a hole in the ice. So what we're going to do is just prime it a couple times, turn the choke on, and run it quick. And the reason this started so smoothly is I've been using products like True Fuel, and it's a pre-mixed gas that has all of the additives that make sure my augers don't get gummed up over the summertime. The added bonus with True Fuel is that it's all pre-mixed and there's different types you can buy and it's cleverly labeled. So if you're like my dad, you don't get it mixed up. The next big thing for your auger is your auger blades. So let's take a look. So for your blades, run your fingers from the back to front on each blade just to make sure there's no chips, ridges, or breaks. And if there are, just get them replaced or sharpened. And when we hit the ice, we always carry an extra set of blades because you never know if you're going to dull your blades up. And to protect your blades, get a good auger cover like this Cold Snap Ice Auger cover. Not only will your blades thank you, but your back will too. The next thing is you need a skimmer, and always have a couple of them. So when it comes to skimmers, just get the ones that work best for you. And remember, it is well worth having 1 or 2 extras. So now that your auger works and you have your skimmers ready, onto your fish catching devices. For me, I check all my rods from the blank itself, and then I check the guides to make sure there's no chips or breaks. And if there are any, either do a simple repair or go get them replaced or buy some new ones. And then for my reels, simply do a good clean check on them to make sure there's no dirt in there. Doesn't matter if there's going to be water there because it's going to get wet and freeze anyway. And then your line. For me, I always replace my line on my rod and reel every year because that's just what I like to do. But if you're using any braids, you can get a good 2 to 3 years out of them. And when it comes to mono and fluorocarbon, you've got to replace that every year because it will develop line memory and really screw up the lure action. Here in North Dakota, we're allowed 4 lines per person when we're on the ice. That means having some rod holders that either clip onto your bucket or lay on the ice makes everything a whole lot more manageable. So now, when it comes to all of my tip-ups, I simply make sure that the flag and the spring are still good, and then I do a quick visual inspection of the line and make sure that the reel spins. Another thing to check with the spool mechanism is to make sure there's a little bit of grease coming out the top, because that's what keeps it from freezing up. And when it comes to line, it doesn't matter what brand you buy, but it matters on how tight the weave is, because that's what holds out the water. And if you want your line just a bit more waterproof, simply run it over a candle a couple of times. And another little simple trick to add to your tip-ups is these little survey flags, because it's a lot easier to see 2 flags instead of 1. Just like when you're putting your tackle boxes away, when you take them out, it's important to check for any rust that has ruined any of your hooks and lures, and then replace them. Also, make sure you got all of your stuff stocked up and you have all your favorite sizes and colors ready to go. Now, what's really cool about the ice fishing market is you've got all sorts of these little tackle boxes that can fit any style of fishing. So with this one, you have a magnet system, and in this one, it's a silicone pad. And you can throw a handful of your favorite jigs and spoons in there. So when you're out hole hopping, you have a box in your pocket. And then when you need to make a necessary change to figure out what the fish want, it's as simple as opening your box. Don't need to run back to your sled that's 50 yards away. So when it comes to all of your graphs and flashers, just simply make sure the battery is good and charged. And when it comes to the actual unit, make sure the wires are hooked up, because we all know that stuff breaks just sitting around. And now for your winter clothing, try it on and make sure it's all in one piece. You know, like my boot from last year, it's got a hole in it, so that's not going to keep me very warm or dry. Next, just make sure everything fits. Because according to Mom, clothes tend to shrink over the summer. And speaking of safety, there's a lot of safety tools like these ice picks that are out there. And a lot of people don't think they need them until they actually do. But the most important safety tool of all is making wise decisions, having at least 50 feet of rope, and going out with a buddy who knows how to use them. Now that we have everything checked over and in the sled, the last thing to consider is if you're going to be on the ice after dark, how are you going to light up your area? What we did is we bought a whole bunch of these simple LED lanterns. You can get a whole bunch of them for pretty cheap. Next, pick up a couple headlamps. You don't need to spend a ton of money on them, but get a couple good quality ones. And now that everything's in the sled and ready to go, all we have to do is wait for first ice.
Everybody's been asking what Peter's going to do now that he's done with high school. Well, let me tell you about Sakakawea State University, the official educational choice of Secrets to Fishing TV.
How old do you have to be to go to Sakakawea State University?
Well, Cohen, I started when I was 5, and at Sakakawea State University, a lot of people have learned what it takes to stay in schools.
I learned patience and to always stay humble at Sakakawea State University.
Wait, did somebody say Sakakawea State University? Most important thing, stay in schools.
I've earned money because I learned to stay in schools.
We wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't stayed in school.
What do I have to do to stay in schools?
All you gotta do is go to Sakakawea State University Facebook page and learn all sorts of fish facts, and then go fishing.
Hi, Peter. Hey, I wish I went to Sakakawea State University.
I wish my kid would have picked Sakakawea State University.
Sakakawea State University, the official Fish Facts Facebook page and clothing line of Secrets to Fishing TV.
I invented Sakakawea State University.
Is this on? Hello? Hello?
What are you doing, Mr. Voiceover Guy?
I'm trying to get this mic to work for my big speech.
You need to check out 241 Inc. Productions. It doesn't matter if it's a live event or a video. They'll make you look good, and in your case, sound good.
Where do I find them?
Check out 241incproductions.com.
Thanks, Peter. Now to today's secret.
Doesn't matter if you're standing here or if you're standing here, today I'm going to tell you the secret to catching more fish. It doesn't matter if you're in a boat or on shore, you need to fish where the fish are, and you need to be in a place where you can get your bait to the fish. One of the best ways to do this is by using a map to identify different structure options. Then treat every shore fishing spot like it is the bow of the boat. Remember, just because you're shore fishing doesn't mean you have to stay put. Look at your map and identify the kind of structure that the fish are relating to, and keep moving from spot to spot just like you would in a boat. So it doesn't matter if you're on shore or in the boat. If you use your maps to find the fish, you'll catch more fish.
Learning to find fish at home is brought to you by ShopMissouriSecrets.com.
So now that you have all of your ice fishing gear and equipment ready to go, where should you go and how do you find the fish even before you leave your house? Here, we're going to take a look at the resources that we use that can help you locate and understand your next fishing spot. It doesn't matter if you're on the road or at home, these resources are available on your phones and computers, so let's get into it. Most state natural resource agencies have online services that cover many things like fishable lakes, stocking reports, testing data, any special restrictions, and most importantly, fishery status. So let's check out a few North Dakota lakes and what their fishery status is. So let's start with Coal Lake. Now we fished here a few years ago and did okay with some smaller sized walleyes, but in the 2018-19 winter, it's severely winter killed. But in 2019 and 2020, they stocked some fingerling walleyes. Now there's some 13 to 15 inch walleyes growing. Next, we're going to check out Horsehead Lake, which doesn't have a boat ramp. It says there's good numbers of northern pike and walleye, and that'll be a good place to take kids because you can catch a lot of pike pretty easily. Now we're going to check out Woodhouse Lake. Holy cow, walleyes up to 28 inches abundant, fair number of small perch. Access may currently be difficult to Woodhouse Lake due to flooded roads. Now that's one worth putting on the list. Now, if you're like me, you like searching for lakes that have undiscovered potential. And a good example of this is when I was growing up, there's a lake that we ice fished that had a ton of boat and water ski traffic during the summertime. But every single time we went there on the ice, with nobody in sight, we hammered the big perch and fun catchable sized pike every single time we were there. So even though it might look really beat up, or it seems that nobody fishes there, it's still worth doing the research on. So let's check out some stocking reports. One that's really close to home is East Arota Dam. Now I've heard that there's a lot of pike and yellow perch in there, but there's got to be something else in there. Yep, the first thing that comes up is white crappie and black crappie. Scrolling through, there's also rainbow trout and bluegill. So I definitely want to bring a lot of small jigs and stock up on spikes and waxworms. Another lake we want to try out this winter is Sweetbriar Lake. Now we've heard there's pretty good multi-species fishing in there, and going through here, there's a lot of walleyes here. So along with the walleyes, there's a lot of largemouth bass with some yellow perch. So I'm definitely going to want to bring some big jigs and big minnows, and that should do the trick. The next thing to look at is what the test netting data shows. Now, don't get caught up in quality or quantity, but what's actually in this particular place. Because if there's big fish, you know there's going to be more. And if there's a lot of fish, there's going to be a lot more. So let's check some out. Lake Brecken here in McLean County. So with their nets, they caught roughly 14 walleye per net and very minimal yellow perch and carp. But the interesting number is the length range for walleye is 7 inches all the way up to 22 inches. So that's definitely worth going on the list. In recent years, biologists have been doing electrosurveying, and this tends to be a little more representative of what's actually in a lake. So let's take a look at an electric survey. Let's check out Sweetbriar Lake. Now there's a lot of different species on this survey here. Black bullhead, they caught 26 per hour. Common carp, 17. Now the bluegills and walleyes, they caught 15 and 11 per hour. So it doesn't seem like the fish we're targeting are high up on the survey. So Sweetbriar will go on the lower side of the go-to list. So now that you know what fish are in the lake, it's time to check out the next resource, and that's the Navionics mapping system. It is free to use online and requires internet, but for just $15 a year, you can download all US lakes to your mobile devices with the added benefit of not even needing cell service for it to work. So let's check out some of our favorite lakes and see what's hiding under the ice. When we're using Navionics, the first thing we look at is what the lake structure is. Lakes with more structure provide plenty of areas that will concentrate fish that are easier to target, whereas a lake that is lacking any obvious structure is a place you need to be prepared to drill a lot of holes and search for that little difference, like a short weed line, small rock pile, or tree stump. Now, in addition to using the Navionics maps, we also look at satellite imagery, and that'll help us find any obvious structure like a big weed line, trees sticking out of the water, or a rocky point. If you've never used these resources before, it can be a bit overwhelming. But what's important to understand is that there's no right or wrong way to use them. And when you take the time to study them and use them wisely on the water, you'll find that you catch more and bigger fish.
This week's Leaving Ripples is brought to you by MPR Models.
Growing up, we were taught that it is important to leave a place better than you found it. As important as this is, it is even more important to leave people better than you found them. Doesn't matter if it's a bait shop employee, angler you meet at the boat ramp or fish cleaning station, or even a fellow tournament competitor. Take the time to help someone out, even if it is a simple gesture of kindness or hope. So remember, leave someone better than you found them, and leave ripples.
Thank you to these great partners for making Secrets to Fishing possible.